discuss a little bit about the insights on data observability and the different challenges and how it has been adopted by many, many companies, and how we move from the early stage from monolith to microservice, distributed system, cloud compute. So to kick off this conversation, I think we should start with a little definition about data observability. Not sure if I shoot it out or I share mine, we can discuss over. From our side, what we think is that data observability, the ability to understand the wealth or health of data throughout the whole data lifecycle. That helps companies to understand, triage, resolve, and debug in a timely manner any issue happening around them. Are you agreeing with this one? Or?
Yeah, sure. I completely agree with what you have said, and also, the data observability allows us to monitorize all the process, to keep track, to identify all the quality of data, to ensure that the data we have is of high quality, because all the analytics we can do from that, it depends on the quality. So if we don't have a good quality or we have problems, we have alerts and we don't handle all that stuff, then.
And that's what our friend from Microsoft was showing earlier on the data quality also. So let's get there on the three pillars of observability. We talk about usually metrics, logs, and tracing. How have you seen the evolution on distributed systems and cloud compute applying observability?
I'll move this over. One of the things that I do with the CNCF is to help with the shape and form of Kubernetes, helping define the APIs. And in order to do that, we needed to understand the community's use of the Kubernetes API. And we have a website that actually details and makes a visual graph of the Kubernetes API. It's called apsnoop.cncf.io. In order to do that, we needed some observability into the API itself. So there was a system called audit logging that was part of the Kubernetes API in the early days to dynamically say, for every API coming in, please send this, the whole URL, or the whole GET to, or the whole post to a database. Or to a URL, and we put a database in that to query it. And so we use that to generate visibility into the shapes so that we can have tests. So that the way and definition of Kubernetes went from only knowing 11%, 9 or 11% in Kubernetes 1.9 to I think we've only got like 40 endpoints left out of about 400. It's the evolution there being we didn't have any idea what the shape was other than the open API spec. And we knew that we needed to make sure that every vendor did the same thing. Wow. And so this allowed us to see how much of that was actually being provided by our different providers and give us a very measurable goal of having the metrics of how much is well defined. And I think probably in the next year, maybe we'll get finally to 100% defined conformance for Kubernetes.
How you get back to those companies to showcase and saying this is the standard and this is the information we just found?
For this release, it's actually part of SIG architecture with Kubernetes. And so when they have new APIs that come in, we let them know that those need to include the test. And that allows the community to fully define what Kubernetes is. And with the CNCF, what we provide is a conformance program based on that observability where they must run inside of their own clusters. Google, Apple, Amazon, everybody has to do this every release in order to say we provide Kubernetes as defined by the Kubernetes SIG architecture group. So our feedback is pretty quick. And if there are any failing tests or things where there's a disagreement, it's all very publicly discussed and resolved in short order.
Well, that's pretty cool. On your side?
Well, before maybe, I'm going back to your first question, right? Because regarding data observability, I think that there are actually two dimensions here. I think what you started talking about was more a business level observability, where actually these days there are many people, I would put not technical, but working on the business leaders, right? that currently don't have a clue of what data they have in the company, right? So this is one of the areas of what I would call observability from a business point of view. And then here we are talking more about observability of the in Kubernetes pods, how they are communicating, traces, logs, right? So I think we need to somehow see exactly what we mean when we trade that, yeah? So I think there has been a huge improvement now with Kubernetes, thanks to Kubernetes and containers, to be able to see what is happening inside, yeah? Something that before maybe was difficult with that monolithic software, right? But still, even though we know those things now, and we can manage that, and it's obviously difficult to implement that in an organization, right? Still, I think we are talking about a technical perspective. Even if you know about all these details, if this is somehow managed in silos, right, with just technical people know about that, the whole business is not aware still of the data that is in the company. And I think when we talk about this observability, we need to separate well the two challenges here, right? Data discovery and all these kind of things are more related to the business side because they are missing completely that. And then the observability from a technical perspective is a more technological thing that is going to be hard to introduce because it requires quite a lot of knowledge, right? So I always try to separate that when I talk to our customers, right, of what they are really talking about, yeah?
That's an interesting point because I've usually seen it like a tech stack where you got, because on the business side, you need to link your KPIs based on the data you have from the company. Otherwise, you will really mess up the whole thing. No? So for me, it's like a single silo where you go from infrastructure, application service, business, and from there you can start developing. But we talk about 3 pillars, logs, metrics, how you can integrate this in a successful DevOps strategy. Things on Inkerland, for example.
Yeah, so to integrate these pillars, we need to let's say, we need to understand which is the problem we have on our hands, at hands. So we need to, sorry. There are different problems that we may have. One of them is the consumption of the applications we may have. So if we want to monitorize all our applications and know which is the CPU usage, the memory usage we are having, how much resources do we need, if we need to increase them or decrease them, all this needs to be handled and needs to be managed. And for this, we can have our metrics, our logs, our traces. If we have a distributed environment with heterogeneous, distributed and heterogeneous environment, then we also need to have all the traces. And in this sense, it can help.
Do you have specific tools for that?
We use different tools, and it depends on the problem at hand. But to mention some of them, we have used Dynatrace, Datadog, and New Relic, which are some tools that need to be paid. But if we want some open source tools, we also have Prometheus, for example. So yeah, and then if we go into the exact metrics, I mean, if we want to have a tool for recording the logs, for example, then we can use open search from Amazon Web Services, or yeah, there are many tools, but then you need to analyze multiple things and just select what is the best thing you need for that particular problem. So,
Hippie hacker, on your side, how you see tools on a data observability side?
In our world, for my team, we primarily focus on the community side. So we're actually supporting the existing 130, 140 CNCF projects and trying to figure out how to give them some onboarding process that includes how do we help them have, some of this is observability and metrics and tracing. Within our findings is that it's very hard for people to get those toolings up in a meaningful way quickly. And so we need lots of easy click to instantiate pretty much to see what would it look like if you chose some of these tools and put them together for your application. So we actually, to make that simple, we set up clouds specific like a Kubernetes cluster with all the tooling in place to bring up their software so that it can be traced. And that way, and I hope that we can make this work across more projects so that both the connection with the vendors that have tooling and the open source projects can have a way to quickly bring in experts from those particular fields to say, we'd like to see how this is working with Cilium project. We'd like to see how this is working with these projects that have some great visibility, but we don't do a lot of cross-pollination of approaches. And because it's deep science, if you will, we need it to be not so difficult to just get right to the point of it working and invite the right people to document how someone else can make it real for more projects faster, and in the end, more companies faster. But it's the visibility and transparency we have in the open source projects would be a great place to start because we don't often have that visibility within companies.
It's a bit overwhelming when you see the landscape of how many incubator projects, graduated projects, which one should I choose? Our friends earlier, they were showing how you can choose and where you drive the path on developing. What about in large organizations, Aitor? How you get observability?
In large organizations, I guess the biggest problem is the legacy applications. They are not, let's say, adapted to, there is monitoring there, right? Usually there are monolithic applications that they use. You can monitor how all this thing is working, but it doesn't have the flexibility of a microservice architecture, right? So adding there logging and all these kind of things is quite a challenge, and you will never achieve the benefit of a microservice architecture, right? So I think this is the big gap. How do you make the big companies that have applications that are there for years, right? Very deep inside the company's day-to-day business, and to move on to something that could be open source, even though many are reluctant to do that because of the lack of, support and these kind of things.
Enterprise support.
And evolve, So I think this is, sometimes what I have seen is that some companies get into that when it's already too late, in the sense of we don't have a choice. This thing is not working anymore. There are no support anymore, so we need to think out something. So the mental shift that you have to make in order to jump is quite big. So we spend a lot of our time as well trying to explain the potentiality of going to new approaches, right? Kubernetes and things like that.
It's interesting.
But I think it's difficult to
mental shift.
Yeah.
That's a good one because we usually talk about vendor locking, but also the mentality, it's a locking for many companies.
Absolutely.
It's how you used to run things, and that shift is really, I think it's the first step before getting into all this observability, is to really understand and put everybody on the same page. So
and that requires quite a lot of teaching, showing, learning, because it's a complete different world.
It's letting them fail. I think that's the biggest one.
And this is one of the things that we are facing with bigger companies. I would say more than bigger companies, traditional companies.
It's a
if
huge
you have an
culture
open source
shift.
startup, it's not the same thing. They try new things, but the one that is already established has really difficulties.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. Startups, large organizations, startups fail fast. You have the churn to test and create very large ones. It's a slow wheel that trying to shift things will take long time. But I'm going to introduce one more thing here. It's all this hype of artificial intelligence. Everybody's, even my grandma is talking about artificial intelligence. How does it apply to observability? How you think that can benefit data platforms where we start introducing this? I don't know, time resolution, identifying patterns that it takes time for an engineer to look at or define metrics?
Yeah, and also for it can help to detect all the anomalies that we can have. If we use, for example, the different metrics that we can keep recording, then we can detect all the anomalies, anomalous usage on the CPU, for example, or yeah, in that sense, artificial intelligence can help. But also, we can use this artificial intelligence just to reproduce all the life cycle of the models, and we can use data observability to keep track of the different models and trainings that we can be doing. So, for example, artificial intelligence, it's not just we train a model and we keep it there. No, the real usage of that of artificial intelligence is to use, deploy, and identify when we have a different, let's say, to identify when the data sources changes, or we need to retrain again the model, and we need to identify that. And all this, artificial intelligence can help on all this.
Well, I hope we can have a level 1, level 2, level 3 support just on AI, so it doesn't bother me on the evenings, just on call to actions. But how do you see it?
One of the areas that I did early on was some of the outlier research. We did some threat detection at banks. And so when you have these things that require people's attention, using the people who are experts to help tune the system. So it's a type of AI called expert systems, and making sure we capture the human element of solving that. So when a human input is required, again, they're kind of presented with some AI generated options, but also the capturing of the human component of it. So I think while we have this the generative and regenerative nature of the AI component, I think being able to have present the humans with the ability to shift and adjust it is critical.
So we'll save time on building like 7,000 dashboards based on every single application?
Yeah. Part of it is just outlier detection and saying what is different at this point, and making sure that the human's eyes can focus down on this piece, and the human to say, actually, that style of outlier is not worth human attention, so that you can focus on drawing attention when it's actually critical and necessary. And also taking your experts and your juniors, allowing your juniors to also have feedback and change it while overriding your more senior engineers.
I say it also creating your own metrics. So identify something that nobody was aware of, it automatically generates that metrics and builds the whole process for you.
I think people in different organizations will have different data sets with that human input, and when you have humans who are really good at that area, that data set will become more interesting than ones that are just without the human input.
It's interesting, the human input, about the quality of that input. You talk about experts. I usually remember the book of the Phoenix project and the Unicorn project, how the expert turns into a bottleneck for the whole company. No?
Yep.
I guess AI can solve part of that challenge. But jumping to, have you seen how companies' successful story of applying a data observability platform has really benefit from an existing problem? Have you seen a large differentiation on that use case? Someone that says, well, they build this and voila, 6 months of problems just drop down to 1 week.
I consider they are still working on it, yeah? I haven't seen really any. I mean, all this is kind of evolving now, but there are not many.
Makes it more efficient, but not till the point that makes a huge difference.
I would say so. I mean, if you want to do AI, you need data observability already. So this is the first work, yeah? Because otherwise you won't be doing proper models.
Yeah.
And if once you want to put in production these models, you need observability as well, just to see how it's behaving. I think, from my experience, most of the company are still at the stage of knowing what data they have, trying to identify what quality they have in their data, freshness and things like that. And I don't know, it's still a very early stage.
So in the discovery phase, that is the one you are talking about, we've seen very large companies that I still remember. I've been involved in large of data center migrations all over the world. And I remember a large company that they just turned the servers with the certificate renewals once a year. It was shut down, but just by security, once a year it pops up, renews the certificate, and then shut down. And in that migration, nobody knew what the server was doing because the guy was retired or left the company, so you lose that know-how. Or even developers, which we like to talk about, having like, hey, suddenly you do a discovery and you find that 100 developer environments out there with a lot of data that you don't even know where they took it off, right? So, not interesting use case for our talk.
In trying to figure out who to connect with when you have an application in the open source community, it goes back to people.
Yeah.
And when we needed the observability, what we did was we took something from Maori culture. And in Maori culture, when you go into their maraes or their places of meeting, you give your whakapapa, which is the people that stepped off this particular canoe when coming to New Zealand and all the way down to you. And when they do this, it instantly allows them to identify other people in the room that they have connection and relationship with. And we actually went to China and presented a talk on their whakapapa. So our friend was able to present this, and we incorporated it into how we do our tracing. So we sent a stack trace as part of our logging protocol, and then we would use that to identify the right humans in the code base, because you have all the functions they went through, and figuring out which functions were a heat point to find the right humans to talk to when we were trying to get support for writing the test for Kubernetes. So it's always which people need to talk to each other, and using this beautiful pieces of technology, whether it's AI, observability, or logging, to say who needs to be in the room together to make this work well for all of us and then benefit the people beyond the ones in the room.
That's interesting. Before Anne was talking about enterprise products and tools, why don't you show me something from the CNCF? Which ones will you
Oh,
on observability? We talked already about Cilium.
absolutely. So I think you were mentioning one of the problems around, we have this company that doesn't have any tooling yet, and we really need some drop-in replacements for run your thing inside of this and we'll provide some initial visibility. Without mentioning specific tools and advocating for them, I think things like eBPF and being able to do tracing around an application, wrapping it, replacing the libraries for SSL so that you can go through and add observability inside of that application.
Jagger.
Java?
Jagger.
Jagger is there. So for some tracing and visibility, it's
a huge landscape, huh?
yeah. So if you I don't know if you use the word landscape, but there's a CNCF landscape, l.cncf.io, that is a bit overwhelming, but there's lots of data to mine there to figure out which projects or humans to get connected to.
Okay, so I think we're almost on top of the hour. Any comments, any feedback you would like, suggestions to our audience around data observability? What key takeaway should they?
If you give me just a second,
Sure.
I would like to add two specific use cases that we had, because it's true that these data observability, they are not like very, very good use cases maybe, but data observability helped us. So I think that just to have an idea on how this can help us, it could be useful. So we had a computer vision use case and a time series data use case. And we used data observability to keep track of all this life cycle of the model. And it helped when a concept drift appeared or a new degradation appeared, it helped us retraining the model and specifically in a distributed scenario where each client had its own model. So it's a federated distributed scenario where we used federated learning, and in these two use cases, data observability helped us. So yeah, I wanted to mention that example.
That's interesting. I've seen, for example, telecom companies that you run the whole observability thing, which they were not aware about where my data is allocated, and get back to the CIO and say, hey, you're losing $300,000 a year because of not having an optimized infrastructure. If you can allocate this whole thing, I think that makes when top of the ladder and stakeholders, you touch their pockets, things really change in the company. So it's more a top-down approach than a bottom-up. Any other feedback? Aitor?
I think we are done.
So, well, thanks very much, everybody, for joining this session. And let's take to the next one. Huh? I think we're missing Bart, no?
My question is this. All of you work, sorry. Okay, we're good. All of you work in different kinds of organizations, all right? Well, you can explain a little bit as well too about, I know there have been some comments about the teams, but obviously AWS is not the same as Icarlan, which is not the same as Datua, which is not the same as where Hippie Hacker works. Would he'll explain? So from I always come back to this part, not just as being someone who comes from more of a non-technical background, but when we're speaking about things like data observability, what are things that organizations simply can't afford to overlook from a technical perspective and also from a human perspective, right? So when we're talking about your average stakeholder, what are things that they simply cannot afford to not know, right? When it comes to, because when we talk about data, it's like, no, we're not talking about data, we're talking about insights and insights why, so we can make better decisions, right? What this all comes down to. So I want to know more about that in each organization. So just give a little bit of background. For example, maybe some people don't know about Datua, so if you can explain what Datua is, what it's doing, and how that culture is being built out, and then we can take it to each other example, all right?
Okay.
Only thing, Aitor, can you make sure you're talking to the microphone?
Yeah. So Datua is a company from here, actually. And what we do is we actually work with different companies to help them in their data ecosystem, right? That would be the idea. The first things that when we are called about some problems, right, they actually already give us the solution that they want, right? For example, now it's very clear. We want artificial intelligence. And now you heard about ChatGPT, right? Right? Everybody wants to have ChatGPT. It's like, it has become like the next big thing. So the first thing they do is they actually already tell us what they are expecting, okay? So our hardest work there is to let them know that the first thing is to clean up your house, right? Have your data properly managed, have a proper quality and measure the quality. And there is what we have, the data observability and all these kind of, I would call them concepts, right? That are supported with great tools like Jagger that we mentioned before. And that's our main thing. First, let them know that, okay, you have all these things, there are all these options, and then you have to take the hard decision before you enter into a big investment in something that probably won't work. Because if you don't have proper data, you won't have proper AI. I mean, how do you say that? I don't want to use a bad word, but if you put bad data into a model, you won't get a good model at all. So I would say that a lot of work is very much didactic, is the English word, yeah? Teaching them that there are options there, that things have changed quite a lot, especially in the open source community. There is a lot of work there, and it's even hard to follow everything that is happening, right? So just to put that on the table and see what the strategy they want to take in order to have not a short-term win with a model that can work in something special, but in a long term, just to be sustainable, because otherwise they will spend lots of money and it won't go anywhere, you know? That would be a little bit what we do.
Yeah, that's
more a teacher than a technologist.
Not a babysitting, yeah.
A babysitting, yeah.
Okay, so I work in Icarlan. Icarlan is a technology center from Arrasate, located in Arrasate, Arrasate Mondragon, inside Guipúzcoa and the Basque Country. Okay, and Icarlan has different units. I belong to the data analytics and artificial intelligence team. Inside the information and information and electronics department, And what we do is just we take care of the whole life cycle of the models and data from its data collection part to the deployment. So we have artificial intelligence, but we also work on data architectures. We also work on data spaces, and we do this kind of stuff. And we also need to keep on researching the latest trends on this area. And we also try to help the companies and give them the solutions to the problems they have. So we have this both parts, the research part, but also the application part. So yeah, it's in general terms, that's what we do.
Thank you. I'm Hippie Hacker, and when I first went to New Zealand to work there's a big mural on the wall, and it said, if you want to go fast, go by yourself, but if you want to go far, go together. And our mission at II.NZ is to help people do things together rather than doing it by themselves. And I think companies and organizations and open source projects would benefit from ensuring that the first moment that people are using and inhabiting that space that is where your things and places are, that they're with someone else, they get to do it together. And so we help to create online spaces where it's a web page where everybody's on the same page together, whether it's a TMUX session, a terminal, or a virtual network computer, but it's loaded with all of the storytelling tools specific to doing instrumentation. So the way in which we help the Kubernetes community define what Kubernetes is via these shared spaces. And specifically to data sovereignty, we don't just do it for the CNCF. We work with indigenous Maori who are trying to have some control and influence because luckily the Queen of England, back when they did a treaty, said, we want to consult with you on important decisions in our nation. And so they're asking, so how can we do that? So we help create databases and things so that there's an online way for them to work with their data scientists and invite other people to do it together. And so it's the visibility, instrumentation of humans and empowering them to solve these problems together that I think I would encourage everybody to be very aware of, regardless of the technology stack that you use.
Oh, that's interesting. Well, on our side, on Amazon Web Services, we have this core value of working backwards, which is part of our customer obsession. So we start trying to understand pain points that our customers are suffering and trying to provide centralized or single pane of glass. You mentioned like a tool that doesn't matter if you fetch from open source tools, third party, other vendors, trying to aggregate and trying to find those solutions. Doesn't matter if it's in the cloud, if it's on-prem, we have hybrid architectures also that can fit on that area, but always looking on what your problems are and then working backwards to try to find the product, the solution that can really fit on your thing. Huh? So that's what we do. So Bart,
next question, Bart. Next question.
More? I knew he was going to come with
He's
more.
very fast.
Time's up. Time's up.
Well, I also want to invite, do we have any questions from the audience that you'd like to ask? No, well, we have to remember most of our audience is Basque, which means they're socially challenged. That's okay. Skilled in other areas. So one thing that I was actually just asking Alejandro, so if you could only take one data, we want to focus on observability, but let's just think about data tools in general, but I guess we can stick on the side of observability. If you could only take one data tool with you to a deserted island, which one would it be and why? We'll start with you, Guillermo. Yes, you do. Yes, you do. One. You can only take one. And it can't be from Amazon.
Yeah, but if I go to a desert island, I wouldn't take anything with me. Huh?
And imagine it's a desert island where you have to bring a data tool.
Oh gosh. I'll probably open source tools because that's something I can take time to evolve, reshape, adapt to my custom needs rather than something that it's already been done.
Awesome. I'm in a similar vein. II is instant infrastructure, and so we try to make bootable USB sticks. I'd bring a tool that I could boot on local hardware that had the tools to work with whoever was there to help get visibility into not only the culture that was present on the island, because I've done this before. I've gone to different island nations and tried to show up physically. And so this is a very tangent thing, but make sure that the people who are there, you're letting them lead the way, and you provide them with whatever help that you can rather than showing up with whatever you brought.
I think I won't be able to choose a single tool, so I will die in that desert. And it's a difficult question, so I'm not able to choose a single tool. It's not an easy task, eh?
What's the first one that comes to mind?
Excel. Yeah. Me too.
The first one, maybe a Jupyter Notebook. That is a very, very easy tool, and just to play in that desert. And yeah, I don't know. It's not. I agree with Guillermo that it should be an open source tool. So, but yeah, I would choose that. Yeah.
So the ones that know me already, I guess they know the answer. I don't know whether we can call it a tool, but for me it's Kubernetes. I think there is a paradigm shift now in the way we used to work with applications and the way we can work now with containers. And I think this is the biggest shift that everybody has to think about. I mean, wherever I go, many don't know much about Kubernetes, but I say that you better take this fast or quick, because otherwise you will be like losing years of change, yeah, that will happen. So if I would take one, it would be Kubernetes as such. And then from there, I can build everything. So,
Okay, good.
Absolutely.
Just to follow up on that, this is cool. You said that a lot of folks there's still some resistance, there's still some doubts. What are the doubts, or people say, why would I use Kubernetes?
well, whoever knows a little bit about Kubernetes knows that it's not a simple, easy thing. I mean, as I said, it's a paradigm shift. We are talking about containers. The architecture is different, microservices. So the traditional way of building applications suddenly has changed, yeah? So I think the change is that big that people get, I don't know, lost of so many possibilities that you might have. This is why education is for me one of the biggest challenges here, because it's not like you have a new tool. I don't know, you have now Grafana and you get another one, or you have React and you go for Angular. No, suddenly it's like everything you have done so far, man, forget about that, and start looking into from a different perspective, everything you are doing. Such a change is not easy to digest, you know? And I think this is the challenge, really. Not because they are afraid, it's that because they don't know, really, these benefits, and they don't have even people. I mean, there's a lot of shortage of people as well that know about that, right? If that was your question.
That was good.
Yeah.
Any final comments? Maybe you want to say something?
Emacs. And we actually have Emacs inside of Kubernetes on a USB stick, so when we show up, we're able to use things like Jupyter Notebooks to help create the data scientists that we need to do the job. So thank you very much for your time.